The night air rests softly over the Nile. The river moves through the darkness with a slow and steady rhythm. Water brushes against reeds growing along the banks. Somewhere in the distance, a fisherman adjusts a rope tied to a small wooden boat. The sound is gentle, almost lost beneath the endless whisper of moving water. Above, the stars shine over ancient Egypt. Most homes have already gone quiet. Oil lamps burn low behind mud brick walls. Families sleep on woven mats. Workers rest tired muscles after another day beneath the hot sun. Bakers, builders, farmers, and servants all drift into sleep beneath the same sky. Yet before long, the darkness will begin to fade. The first pale hint of morning will appear beyond the eastern horizon. Birds will stir among the river grasses. Doors will creak open. Sandals will touch cool stone floors. Fires will be lit. Bread dough will be kneaded. Water jars will be carried from the river. And children will wake. For many children in ancient Egypt, childhood was not seen as a separate stage of life filled with play and freedom. It was preparation, training, a gradual journey toward becoming a useful member of the household. The world around them demanded work from nearly everyone. Life moved according to the seasons of the Nile. Fields needed tending. Buildings needed repairing. Food needed preparing. Records needed writing. Boats needed rowing. Every pair of hands mattered. Even small hands. Tonight, as the river continues its quiet journey through the darkness, we will step gently into that ancient world. We will walk dusty roads beside children who rose before sunrise. We will enter workshops filled with the smell of wood shavings and clay. We will sit beside young scribes learning careful lines of writing. We will watch farmers teach sons and daughters the rhythm of the land. And slowly, as the hours pass, we will discover why childhood was often treated as training rather than life itself. The Nile continues to flow. And morning slowly approaches. Long before a child learned a trade, they learned the rhythm of the household. Every home moved according to routines that had existed for generations. In a modest farming village, the day often began before sunrise. The air felt cooler then. For a short time. Soon enough, the heat would return. But before the sun climbed into the sky, families were already awake. A mother might rise first. She would move quietly through the dim room. Perhaps an oil lamp still flickered beside the wall. Perhaps only moonlight entered through a small opening. Grain waited to be ground. Bread needed preparing. Water jars might need refilling. The day had already begun. Children often woke nearby. Not in separate bedrooms. Not behind closed doors. Families frequently shared sleeping spaces. Several people might sleep in the same room. Parents, children, grandparents, and relatives often remained close together during the night. The sounds of waking spread gently through the house. Someone coughs. Someone stretches. A clay bowl shifts against the floor. A door opens. The smell of baking bread slowly appears. For a very young child, these mornings offered the first lessons. No formal teacher stood nearby. No classroom waited. The household itself became the classroom. Children watched. They listened. They copied. A small girl might observe her mother mixing dough. A small boy might watch his father repair a tool. Neither lesson needed explanation. The learning happened naturally. Day after day. Season after season. The adults rarely stopped working simply to teach. There was too much to do. Instead, children learned through participation. A task performed 1,000 times became familiar. A movement repeated every day became normal. Eventually, knowledge settled quietly into memory. Like water slowly soaking into the earth. Outside, dawn spread across the landscape. The Nile reflected soft shades of gold. Mist drifted above the water. Farmers prepared for another day in the fields. Children often accompanied them. Not because anyone wished to burden them, but because the family depended on shared effort. Life required cooperation. A child walking beside a parent could begin learning almost immediately. At first, the tasks remained small. Gathering loose reeds. Carrying light bundles. Watching animals. Fetching water. Simple responsibilities. Yet these responsibilities mattered. They helped the household. And they prepared the child for larger duties later. Ancient Egyptians understood something very clearly. Skills took time. Years of observation. Years of repetition. Years of patience. A future farmer could not suddenly become skilled at adulthood. Training started early. Very early. The fields stretching beside the Nile offered endless opportunities for learning. The river shaped nearly every part of life. Its yearly floods transformed the land. When floodwaters arrived, they spread rich black soil across the fields. When the waters retreated, farmers planted crops. Children witnessed these cycles from the beginning of their lives. The rhythm became familiar. Flood. Planting. Growing. Harvest. Rest. Then beginning again. The land itself became a teacher. Morning sunlight warmed the earth. Bare feet pressed into soft soil. Birds moved through the reeds. Farmers worked patiently beneath the growing heat. Children watched closely. An older farmer might show a child how to recognize healthy crops, how to judge soil moisture, how to guide animals pulling simple tools. These lessons rarely happened through long speeches. Instead, they emerged naturally. A parent points. A child observes. A task is repeated. The lesson settles quietly into place. Years later, the child remembers. The Nile flowed beside all of it. Always present. Always moving. Its water carried boats loaded with grain, stone, pottery, and people. Children living near the river learned another set of skills. Fishing families often involved children from a young age. The river demanded respect. Its currents could be strong. Its wildlife unpredictable. Knowledge mattered. A father repairing fishing nets might allow a child to sit nearby. Small fingers learned how knots worked. How ropes were woven. How damaged sections were repaired. The work could seem repetitive. Slow. Careful. But repetition itself formed part of the training. Patience was valuable. Mistakes carried consequences. A poorly repaired net might mean less food later. Children gradually understood these connections. Their actions mattered. Even small actions. As the morning continued, the sun climbed higher. The coolness disappeared. Heat settled over the land. Workers wiped sweat from their faces. Animals searched for shade. Dust rose from roads traveled by merchants and laborers. Children experienced this environment alongside adults. The heat became part of daily life. So did fatigue. Modern people often imagine childhood as separate from adult concerns. But in ancient Egypt, separation was limited. Children observed labor closely. They witnessed exhaustion. They understood effort. They saw adults return home tired after long days. The realities of work surrounded them. Not as something frightening. Simply as part of existence. In larger towns and cities, training followed similar patterns. The environment changed. The lessons remained. Workshops filled narrow streets. The smell of wood, clay, leather, and metal drifted through the air. Artisans shaped objects used throughout Egyptian society. Furniture makers, potters, stone carvers, jewelry makers, boat builders. Each trade required skill. And each skill required training. Children born into artisan families often spent years observing these crafts. A young boy might sit quietly near his father's woodworking bench. Wood shavings gathered on the floor. Tools rested nearby. Sunlight entered through an open doorway. The craftsman worked steadily. Cutting. Measuring. Smoothing surfaces. The child watched. Perhaps handing over tools when asked. Perhaps sweeping away debris. Perhaps simply observing. At first, participation remained limited. But every day added another layer of understanding. Years passed. Responsibilities increased. Small tasks became larger tasks. Observation became practice. Practice became competence. The transition happened gradually. Almost unnoticed. The workshop itself became a second home. For some children, education took a different path. These children entered the world of scribes. Ancient Egypt depended heavily on written records. Taxes. Land ownership. Trade agreements. Government administration. Temple activities. Everything required documentation. Scribes occupied an important place within society. Their work demanded literacy. A skill not everyone possessed. Becoming a scribe required years of training. Young students spent long hours learning symbols, words, and writing techniques. Their days followed strict routines. Lessons required concentration, patience, discipline. A scribe's school could feel quiet compared to a busy marketplace. Students sat carefully. Writing materials rested before them. Teachers guided exercises. Mistakes were corrected. Exercises repeated. Again. And again. And again. The work demanded persistence. Children copied texts repeatedly. Not because the process was exciting, but because mastery required repetition. The scratching sound of writing tools filled the room. Sunlight moved slowly across the floor. Outside, daily life continued. Inside, students trained for future responsibilities. Even here, childhood remained closely connected to preparation. The purpose of learning was practical. Education opened opportunities. But it also carried expectations. Knowledge would eventually serve society. A future role awaited. As afternoon approached, heat pressed heavily upon the land. Workers sought brief moments of rest. Shadows shortened. The air seemed to stand still. Children felt the heat as intensely as adults. Some tasks slowed. Others continued. Life could not simply stop. A farming child might sit beneath limited shade beside family members. A simple meal appeared. Bread. Vegetables. Perhaps fish. Perhaps dates. The food was modest. Familiar. Necessary. Conversations remained practical. Discussion of crops. Animals. Household needs. Children listened. Learning continued even during rest. Knowledge passed through everyday conversation. No formal lesson required. Only attention. Only presence. The afternoon drifted onward. Dusty roads shimmered beneath sunlight. Merchants guided donkeys carrying goods. Builders continued shaping stone. Servants moved between households. The entire world seemed connected by labor. And children occupied their place within it. Not fully adults. Not entirely separate from adulthood. Somewhere in between. A stage of gradual preparation. A long apprenticeship within life itself. As evening approached, the heat slowly loosened its grip. Shadows lengthened. The sun lowered toward the horizon. The Nile reflected warm colors. Golden light touched mud brick walls. Families returned home. Workers carried tools. Animals moved toward shelter. Children walked beside parents. Tired from the day's activities. Yet tomorrow would follow a similar pattern. And the day after that. And the day after that. Repetition shaped understanding. Routine built skills. The steady rhythm of ordinary life became the foundation of training. Night slowly arrived. Cooking fires glowed softly. The smell of fresh bread drifted through village streets. Voices grew quieter. Darkness settled across the land. Children listened to family conversations. Stories. Advice. Memories. Lessons continued long after work ended. Knowledge flowed through generations like the Nile itself. Slowly. Steadily. Without interruption. And beneath the stars of ancient Egypt, childhood moved forward not as a separate world apart from responsibility, but as a gradual path into it. The river continued its endless journey through the darkness. Oil lamps flickered. Workers slept. Children dreamed. And somewhere beyond the quiet horizon, another morning already waited. The darkness lingers for a little while longer. The Nile glides through the night as it always has, carrying cool water beneath the stars. Along its banks, villages rest quietly beneath a blanket of darkness. Mud brick walls hold the warmth gathered during the day. Palm trees stand motionless in the still air. A dog shifts in its sleep somewhere beyond a courtyard wall. For a few peaceful hours, the world is silent. Then slowly, almost unnoticed, another day begins. A faint gray light appears beyond the eastern desert. The stars fade one by one. Birds stir among reeds growing beside the river. A breeze passes over the water. Soon, sandals touch packed earth floors. Doors open. Fires are lit. The rhythm begins again. For many children in ancient Egypt, this rhythm was one of the first things they learned. Long before they understood laws, religion, or trade, they learned the shape of a day. Morning had its duties. Midday had its challenges. Evening had its routines. Night brought rest. Life moved in circles rather than straight lines. Each season returned. Each task returned. Each lesson returned. And because of this, childhood became closely connected to habit. Children learned what adults did because they saw it every day. There was little separation between observation and education. The two were often the same thing. A young child standing near a doorway could learn a great deal simply by watching. A mother preparing grain. A father mending tools. An older sibling carrying water. A grandmother weaving cloth. The household was always teaching. Not through lectures. Not through formal instruction. But through example. The adults around them became living demonstrations of what life required. Inside a modest home, the morning often began with grain. Grinding grain was slow work. The sound of stone against stone echoed softly through the room. Hands moved steadily. Dust from the grain drifted through shafts of sunlight. Children frequently watched this process from a very young age. At first, they simply observed. Later, they helped. A small hand might carry a bowl. A slightly older child might assist with measuring grain. Years later, that same child could perform the entire task without assistance. Knowledge accumulated gradually. One ordinary morning at a time. The pace was rarely rushed. There was no need. Training unfolded over many years. No one expected a 6-year-old to perform the work of an adult. Yet everyone expected that 6-year-old to begin learning. This distinction shaped much of childhood. Children were not viewed as finished workers. They were future workers. Future farmers. Future scribes. Future fishermen. Future merchants. Future mothers and fathers. Their training simply began early. As sunlight spread across the landscape, the village slowly awakened. Smoke drifted upward from cooking fires. Voices carried through narrow streets. Goats wandered through small courtyards. The smell of fresh bread mixed with dust and warm earth. Children stepped into this world every morning. A world filled with activity. A world where nearly everyone had responsibilities. A world where labor connected directly to survival. The fields beyond the village offered one of the clearest examples. Farming demanded constant attention. Crops could not wait. Water could not wait. Animals could not wait. The land followed its own schedule. Families adapted to it. Children learned that schedule early. A father walking toward the fields might bring a son along. A mother tending crops might be joined by a daughter. The child learned by presence. By standing nearby. By helping when able. By observing every detail. The lessons often appeared simple. How to carry a basket. How to identify weeds. How to guide animals calmly. How to store harvested grain. Yet each lesson connected to a larger system. Together they formed a complete understanding of life on the land. The Nile remained at the center of everything. Its annual flooding created opportunities and challenges. When waters rose, fields disappeared beneath broad sheets of water. Villages watched carefully. Families waited patiently. Children witnessed the transformation. The landscape itself became a teacher. The river showed them that life moved according to natural cycles. Nothing remained unchanged forever. Floodwaters arrived. Floodwaters retreated. Seeds were planted. Crops were harvested. Then the cycle began again. Many childhood lessons emerged from these rhythms. Patience. Observation. Preparation. Acceptance. Not because someone sat down and explained these ideas, but because daily life demonstrated them repeatedly. Farther down the river, another child might be learning a completely different set of skills. Perhaps this child belonged to a fishing family. Before sunrise, boats rested quietly near the shore. Their wooden hulls rocked gently against the water. Fishing nets hung nearby. The air smelled faintly of mud, river water, and damp reeds. The child watched adults prepare for the day. Knots were checked. Ropes inspected. Equipment repaired. Everything required care. The river could be generous, but it demanded respect. A damaged net could mean fewer fish. A broken rope could create problems far from shore. Children learned caution alongside practical skills. The process was gradual. A small child might begin by carrying lightweight items. A few years later, that same child could assist with repairs. Eventually, experience accumulated. Confidence followed. Skill developed. Nothing happened quickly. The river itself seemed to encourage patience. It flowed at its own pace. Steady. Unhurried. Ancient Egyptian childhood often mirrored that pace. Elsewhere, in busy towns, children entered workshops that smelled of clay and wood. The atmosphere differed from the fields. But the underlying idea remained familiar. Learning happened through participation. A pottery workshop might be warm even during the morning. Clay rested in large piles. Finished vessels lined shelves. The potter worked with practiced movements developed over many years. A child nearby absorbed these movements through constant exposure. Day after day. Month after month. Year after year. The wheel turned. Hands shaped clay. Water glistened on smooth surfaces. The child watched carefully. At first, the work seemed almost magical. A lump of clay becoming a useful object. But eventually the mystery faded. The process became understandable. Then familiar. Then achievable. The same pattern appeared across countless trades. Stone carving. Carpentry. Metalworking. Textile production. Each skill required observation. Each skill required repetition. Each skill demanded time. And childhood provided that time. The workshop became both workplace and classroom. The distinction barely existed. As the morning heat increased, streets became busier. Merchants arranged goods for sale. Donkeys carried supplies through dusty roads. Temple workers moved between buildings. Messengers crossed town carrying information. Children saw all of it. Ancient Egyptian communities were full of visible labor. Everywhere someone was building, repairing, transporting, recording, or preparing something. The connection between work and daily life remained impossible to ignore. For children, this visibility mattered. They grew up understanding how things were made. How food appeared. How buildings were maintained. How goods reached markets. How households functioned. The process of adulthood unfolded in front of them every day. The future did not feel mysterious. It felt familiar. Gradually approaching. In wealthier households, childhood could look somewhat different. Yet even there, preparation remained important. Children of officials or administrators often received more formal education. They learned reading and writing. They studied records. They practiced copying texts. Still, these lessons served practical purposes. Education prepared them for future responsibilities. The expectation remained the same. A child was becoming something. Training pointed toward that future. Inside a scribe's school, the atmosphere could be remarkably quiet. Students sat in rows. Writing materials rested before them. Teachers watched carefully. The scratching sound of reeds against writing surfaces filled the room. Outside, sunlight illuminated busy streets. Inside, concentration ruled the day. A student copied symbols repeatedly. Lines must remain neat. Forms must remain accurate. Mistakes required correction. The process could be tiring. Hours passed slowly. Yet discipline itself formed part of the education. A future scribe needed patience. Records demanded accuracy. Carelessness created problems. Children learned these lessons through practice. Not through theory. Their hands learned alongside their minds. The room grew warmer as afternoon approached. Sunlight shifted across the floor. Some students stretched tired fingers. Others blinked against fatigue. Learning could be exhausting. But so could farming. So could fishing. So could construction. Ancient Egyptian childhood often involved effort regardless of social position. Different forms of effort. Different goals. The same expectation of preparation. Outside, the heat settled heavily upon the land. The desert beyond the river shimmered beneath the sun. Roads appeared almost white beneath the brightness. Workers searched for shade when possible. Children did the same. Midday offered a brief pause. Meals were shared. Water was consumed carefully. Conversations drifted between practical matters and family concerns. The pace slowed. For a little while. A child sitting beside relatives during one of these meals might hear discussions about harvests. About trade. About repairs needed around the home. About future plans. Even casual conversation carried lessons. Children absorbed information constantly. They learned how adults thought. How decisions were made. How problems were solved. Knowledge traveled naturally through family life. The afternoon eventually continued. Work resumed. The heat lingered. Dust floated through sunlit air. A carpenter returned to his bench. A farmer returned to the fields. A fisherman repaired equipment. A baker prepared another batch of bread. Children resumed their own forms of participation. Sometimes active. Sometimes observational. Always educational. Many young people probably experienced moments of boredom. Moments of fatigue. Moments when they preferred play over responsibility. Ancient children were still children. They laughed. They imagined. They played games. They chased one another through village streets. They swam in safe waters. They invented competitions. They told stories. Childhood certainly contained joy. Yet play often existed alongside preparation rather than replacing it. The two blended together. A child might play at farming while learning about farming. A child might imitate craftsmen while watching real craftsmen. Learning and play frequently overlapped. The boundary remained soft. As evening approached, the fierce sunlight gradually weakened. The air became more comfortable. Long shadows stretched across the ground. The Nile reflected orange and gold light. Workers began returning home. The pace of the world changed. Noise softened. Dust settled. Children walked beside family members carrying tools, baskets, or supplies. The day's lessons came to an end. At least for now. Cooking fires appeared once again. The smell of bread filled the evening air. Voices drifted through open doorways. Families gathered together. Meals were shared. Stories were told. Advice was given. Memories passed from one generation to the next. The process of training continued. Not through formal instruction. Simply through living together. A child listening beside the fire learned things no school could teach. Family history. Local customs. Personal experiences. Practical wisdom earned through years of work. These quiet evening hours often carried some of the most important lessons. Because they connected knowledge to people. To relationships. To memory. Night eventually spread across the land. The stars returned. The river darkened beneath the sky. Oil lamps flickered gently. Workers rested tired muscles. Children settled onto sleeping mats. Tomorrow would look much like today. and that consistency formed the foundation of ancient childhood. The same routines, the same observations, the same gradual accumulation of skill, year after year. Until one day, almost without noticing, the child who once watched from the side was no longer merely observing. The work belonged to them now. And beneath the endless stars above the Nile, another generation quietly moved one step closer to adulthood. The Nile moves quietly through the darkness. Its waters reflect scattered stars that shimmer and bend with every gentle current. Along the riverbanks, reeds sway softly in the night breeze. The great river has witnessed countless generations. It has watched children become adults, adults become elders, and elders fade into memory while the river continues its endless journey toward the sea. Tonight, the villages sleep. A fisherman rests after a long day on the water. A farmer sleeps with tired shoulders after working beneath the sun. A potter dreams while clay dries quietly in a workshop nearby. And throughout the land, children sleep beside parents, brothers, sisters, grandparents, and relatives. Soon another morning will arrive. And with it, another day of learning. Not learning from books alone. Not learning from lessons spoken in classrooms. But learning from life itself. For many children in ancient Egypt, one of the most important teachers was simple observation. The adults around them rarely stopped working. Tasks filled nearly every hour of daylight. There was grain to prepare, water to carry, animals to tend, clothing to mend, fields to manage, boats to maintain. Because of this, children spent much of their time watching adults move through ordinary routines. At first glance, these routines might seem unremarkable. A woman grinding grain, a man repairing a fishing net, a baker shaping dough, a merchant arranging goods. Yet hidden within these ordinary scenes were hundreds of small skills. Skills that took years to master. A child standing nearby could absorb countless details without realizing it. The angle of a tool, the timing of a movement, the sound of healthy livestock, the appearance of fertile soil, the feel of properly woven rope. Knowledge flowed quietly through observation. Like water passing through a field. Slowly. Steadily. Without announcement. A very young child might spend hours near a parent simply because there was nowhere else to be. Families often worked together. Life happened collectively. The modern idea of children spending much of the day separated from adult work would have seemed unusual in many places. Instead, children remained close. They saw labor from the inside. They witnessed how food appeared on the table, how homes were maintained, how problems were solved, how cooperation kept a household functioning. Over time, these observations accumulated. Each day added another small piece to a larger picture. A child did not need to understand everything immediately. Understanding arrived gradually. Like sunrise spreading across the Nile. Slowly revealing details hidden in darkness. As dawn approached once again, faint light appeared over the eastern horizon. Inside a small farming village, families began to stir. The air felt cool. Pleasant. A brief gift before the heat of the day returned. Some children woke naturally. Others were gently encouraged to rise. There was work to do. Not endless work. Not overwhelming work. But enough to remind them that they belonged to the household. That they contributed. That they mattered. A small task could carry great meaning. A child carrying water might not transport much compared to an adult. Yet the act itself mattered. It taught responsibility, dependability, Awareness. The lesson was larger than the water. Ancient Egyptian households often relied upon many small contributions. When several people completed small tasks, life became easier for everyone. Children learned this naturally. The household functioned as a shared effort. No single person carried every burden. Everyone participated according to age and ability. This participation helped shape identity. A child was not merely waiting to become part of society. The child was already part of society. Learning happened while contributing. Contribution encouraged learning. The two became closely connected. Outside, sunlight touched the tops of palm trees. The village awakened. Doors opened. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Voices drifted across narrow pathways. The familiar sounds of morning returned. For some children, the day would involve helping near home. For others, it would involve accompanying adults into fields, workshops, or markets. Every environment offered different lessons. A child following a merchant into town entered a world filled with movement. The roads carried travelers from distant places. Donkeys transported goods. Boats unloaded cargo along the river. Market stalls displayed food, pottery, cloth, tools, and countless other items. The air carried many smells at once. Fresh bread, fish, dust, animals, river water, wood smoke. The marketplace introduced children to exchange, to negotiation, to communication. A merchant's child might observe conversations throughout the day. The careful weighing of goods. The discussion of prices. The importance of honesty and reputation. Trade depended on trust. Children learned this long before they conducted business themselves. A father might explain why one customer received special treatment. A mother might describe the value of maintaining good relationships. These lessons emerged naturally through experience. Nothing felt separate from daily life. Meanwhile, elsewhere along the Nile, another child might spend the morning among animals. Livestock played an important role in many households. Goats, sheep, cattle, donkeys. Each required attention. Children often assisted with basic care. The work encouraged patience. Animals rarely followed instructions perfectly. They wandered. They resisted. They behaved unpredictably. A child learned to remain calm, to observe carefully, to anticipate problems. Such skills proved useful far beyond animal care. They became habits that shaped adulthood. The sun climbed higher. Warmth spread across the landscape. Shadows shortened. The familiar heat began to settle over fields and villages. Workers adjusted their pace. Children did the same. Life beside the Nile required cooperation with the environment. No one controlled the weather. No one controlled the seasons. People adapted. This adaptation formed another important lesson of childhood. Flexibility, acceptance, resilience. Not because these words were taught directly, but because circumstances required them. A farmer could not command rain. A fisherman could not command fish. A merchant could not command customers. Success often depended upon responding wisely to changing conditions. Children witnessed this reality every day. When plans changed, adults adapted. When difficulties appeared, work continued. When challenges emerged, solutions were found. These observations quietly shaped expectations. Far beyond practical skills alone. Inside workshops, another kind of training unfolded. The atmosphere could be almost hypnotic. A carpenter's tools produced steady rhythms. A potter's wheel turned smoothly. A weaver's hands moved back and forth with practiced precision. The repetition filled the air. Hour after hour. Day after day. Children absorbed these rhythms deeply. Many future craftsmen spent years performing seemingly minor tasks. Sweeping floors. Fetching materials. Preparing supplies. Watching masters work. To an outsider, progress might appear slow. Yet these years built foundations. The child learned how the workshop functioned. How materials behaved. How experienced workers solved problems. Knowledge accumulated long before formal responsibility arrived. Eventually, one small task led to another. A simple repair. A basic project. A supervised assignment. Confidence grew gradually. Skill followed. The process resembled the growth of a tree beside the river. Slow enough to seem invisible. Steady enough to transform everything. The same principle appeared in the education of scribes. A young student learning to write faced challenges very different from those of a farmer or artisan. Yet the underlying approach remained familiar. Patience. Practice. Repetition. A scribe's training could last many years. Students copied symbols repeatedly until movements became automatic. Mistakes were corrected. Exercises repeated. Memory strengthened through routine. The work demanded discipline. Many hours were spent sitting quietly. Concentrating. Writing. Reviewing. Writing again. The atmosphere often felt calm. Almost meditative. Outside, the city moved through its daily routines. Inside, students focused on lines of text. The future slowly took shape through countless small efforts. As midday approached, the heat became intense. The land seemed to glow beneath the sun. Roads shimmered. Stone walls radiated warmth. Workers searched for shade whenever possible. Children learned to respect the heat early in life. The Egyptian climate shaped daily schedules. Many activities began early for this reason. Morning offered cooler temperatures. Greater comfort. Better conditions for labor. By midday, movement slowed. Meals became moments of rest. Families gathered beneath whatever shade they could find. Perhaps beneath a simple shelter. Perhaps beside a wall. Perhaps beneath a cluster of trees. The meal itself might be modest. Bread. Vegetables. Dates. Fish when available. Water. Simple food. Familiar food. Necessary food. Children sat among adults. Listening. Watching. Participating in conversations. Important lessons often emerged during these quiet pauses. Stories about past harvests. Advice regarding work. Memories of relatives. Local news. Family concerns. Knowledge passed naturally between generations. Not through formal instruction. Through everyday interaction. These conversations help children understand their place within a larger story. A family story. A village story. A community story stretching back through time. The afternoon unfolded slowly. Heat pressed against the earth. Workers continued their tasks. The pace remained steady. Unhurried. Deliberate. Children moved through this environment alongside adults. By now, many had already spent years observing routines. Years learning expectations. Years practicing responsibilities. The transition toward adulthood happened so gradually that it often lacked a clear beginning or ending. There was rarely a single moment when childhood stopped. Instead, responsibilities increased little by little. A task once performed under supervision became independent. A skill once observed became practiced. A duty once assigned occasionally became permanent. The process felt natural. Like the changing seasons. Like the rising and falling of the Nile. Like daylight slowly becoming evening. And eventually evening did arrive. The fierce brightness softened. Golden light spread across fields and buildings. Long shadows stretched across dusty roads. The air became gentler. Workers began returning home. Children walked beside them. The day's labor slowly faded into memory. Cooking fires appeared throughout villages. The smell of baking bread drifted through the air. Families gathered once more. The atmosphere changed. Work gave way to rest. Conversation replaced labor. The pace slowed. Inside homes, oil lamps flickered softly against mud brick walls. The warm glow illuminated familiar faces. Children listened closely to stories told by elders. Some stories described family history. Others described local traditions. Some carried lessons hidden within memory. A grandfather might describe years spent on the river. A grandmother might remember seasons of abundance or difficulty. Children absorbed these stories alongside practical skills. They learned not only how to work, but how to belong. How to participate in a community that existed before they were born and would continue after they were gone. Outside, the Nile reflected moonlight. The water moved silently through the darkness. The same river that nourished crops. The same river that carried boats. The same river that connected villages, towns, and cities across the land. Generation after generation grew up beside its banks. Children became adults. Adults became elders. The river remained. Its steady presence mirrored the steady process of learning itself. Slow. Continuous. Patient. Never hurried. And as another quiet night settled over ancient Egypt, countless children drifted toward sleep carrying the lessons of another ordinary day. Lessons gathered from fields and workshops. From rivers and roads. From parents and neighbors. From labor and observation. The training continued. Not through grand ceremonies. Not through dramatic transformations. But through the gentle accumulation of experience beneath the stars, beside the ancient Nile, where childhood and preparation flowed together as naturally as the river itself. The night deepens over the Nile. Moonlight rests upon the slow-moving water, turning parts of the river silver while other parts disappear into darkness. Along the banks, reeds whisper softly whenever a breeze drifts through. Palm leaves rustle high above sleeping villages. Somewhere far away, a boat rope creaks gently against a wooden post. Most people are asleep now. The baker who rose before dawn. The fisherman who spent the day on the river. The farmer who worked beneath the heavy sun. The servant who carried water from one side of a household to the other. Their homes are quiet. Oil lamps have burned low. The day's sounds have faded. Only the river remains awake. And while the Nile moves through the darkness, it carries with it countless memories of ordinary lives. Lives that rarely appear in grand monuments. Lives that were built from routine. From effort. From family. And from childhoods shaped by preparation. As another ancient morning approaches, let us wander once more into that world. The first hint of dawn appears softly beyond the eastern horizon. Dark blue skies slowly lighten. The stars fade. The coolness of night lingers for a little while longer. This brief period before sunrise is one of the most peaceful moments of the day. The heat has not yet arrived. The roads remain mostly empty. The village seems to be holding its breath. Then movement begins. A door opens. Footsteps cross a courtyard. Someone stirs a fire back to life. A clay jar is lifted. The day begins again. For children, these early moments often carried quiet responsibilities. Tasks were usually simple at first. Small enough to match their age. Yet meaningful enough to matter. A child might collect kindling for a cooking fire. Another might help gather grain from storage jars. Someone else might sweep a floor before breakfast. These activities were not considered unusual. They were simply part of family life. The household depended on many small efforts working together. Even the youngest members contributed when they could. As sunlight slowly spreads across the village, the smells of morning begin to appear. Fresh bread baking. Wood smoke drifting upward. Warm grain cooking in clay pots. The scents move through narrow streets and over courtyard walls. Children wake to these familiar smells. The same smells their parents knew. The same smells their grandparents knew. The rhythm of life changes little from one generation to the next. Many lessons of childhood came from this consistency. Children learned not only skills but expectations. They learned what mornings looked like. What afternoons felt like. What evenings required. The structure of daily life became deeply familiar. And familiarity brought confidence. A child who knew the routine understood where they belonged within it. This sense of belonging mattered greatly. Ancient Egyptian communities depended on cooperation. Villages often functioned like tightly woven networks. Families knew one another. Neighbors worked alongside one another. Children grew up surrounded by familiar faces. The same people appeared day after day. The same farmers in the fields. The same fishermen by the river. The same merchants in the market. The same craftsmen in their workshops. Because of this, children learned from many adults, not only their parents. An elderly neighbor might share advice while sitting in the shade. A local craftsman might allow a curious child to watch his work. A fisherman repairing nets could answer questions from youngsters gathered nearby. Knowledge flowed through the community. It passed naturally between generations. One person teaching another. Then that person teaching someone else. The process never truly stopped. As the morning grows brighter, the fields beside the Nile begin to fill with activity. Farmers move steadily through rows of crops. Animals graze nearby. Birds circle overhead. The earth, enriched by the river's floods, supports life throughout the region. Children who grew up in farming families often became deeply familiar with the land. Not through formal study. Through experience. They learned how soil felt beneath bare feet. How healthy crops looked in morning sunlight. How changing weather affected the fields. How to recognize signs that adults might overlook. Children spent countless hours outdoors. The landscape itself became part of their education. The sounds of the countryside became familiar companions. The rustling of reeds. The distant call of birds. The splash of water against riverbanks. The creak of wooden tools. The soft voices of workers spread across the fields. Each sound became woven into memory. Years later, adults would still recognize them instantly. Certain sounds never leave a person. The Nile offered another classroom unlike any other. Children living near the river often developed a deep understanding of water. They learned where currents moved swiftly, where fish gathered, where boats commonly traveled. The river connected communities across great distances. It carried grain, stone, pottery, papyrus, and people. Children watched these boats come and go throughout their lives. Some dreamed of becoming skilled boatmen. Others simply enjoyed observing the endless movement. The river seemed alive. Always changing. Always moving. Yet always present. For many young people, it became a symbol of continuity. The same river that carried their grandparents still flowed beside them. The same river would continue flowing long after they were gone. This awareness encouraged a certain patience. A certain acceptance of life's gradual pace. Ancient Egyptian childhood unfolded slowly. Skills developed slowly. Responsibilities increased slowly. Everything happened over time. In workshops throughout towns and villages, a similar process continued. A child entering a carpenter's workshop encountered an environment filled with textures and sounds. Wood shavings covered the floor. Tools rested neatly against walls. Sunlight entered through open doorways. The smell of freshly cut wood filled the air. An experienced carpenter worked steadily. Every movement appeared calm and deliberate. There was no rush. Good work required care. Children learned this lesson repeatedly. A rushed task often produced poor results. Patience created quality. Whether building furniture, shaping pottery, weaving cloth, or carving stone, the principle remained the same. Take your time. Pay attention. Observe carefully. Children absorbed these values through daily exposure. The workshop itself became a teacher. Even silence taught lessons. Watching skilled hands move confidently across familiar tasks could leave a lasting impression. A young apprentice might spend hours observing before attempting anything independently. Observation came first. Action came later. Mastery arrived much later still. As the day warms, activity spreads throughout marketplaces. The market serves as one of the busiest places in any community. Voices fill the air. Merchants display goods. Customers inspect products. Animals move between stalls. Dust rises beneath countless footsteps. Children visiting these places encounter a world full of sights and sounds. Brightly colored cloth. Freshly baked bread. Baskets overflowing with vegetables. Clay pots stacked carefully in rows. The marketplace teaches lessons beyond trade. It teaches social skills. Communication. Courtesy. Awareness. Young people learn how adults interact. How disagreements are handled. How agreements are reached. How trust develops over time. These observations become part of their education. Life itself provides the lesson. As midday approaches, sunlight grows intense. Heat settles heavily across the land. Stone walls absorb warmth. Roads shimmer. Workers slow their pace. Shade becomes precious. Children seek shelter alongside adults. The hottest hours of the day encourage rest whenever possible. A family might gather beneath a simple shelter. A meal is shared. Water is passed from hand to hand. Conversation drifts lazily through the warm air. These moments offer something valuable. Stillness. Ancient life involved much labor. Yet it also contained pauses. Moments when work stopped and people simply sat together. Children learned during these quiet periods too. Stories often emerged. Family memories. Village news. Observations about the harvest. Advice about future responsibilities. The spoken word carried great importance. Many lessons passed through conversation. Knowledge did not always require writing. Wisdom often traveled through voices. From parent to child. From elder to youth. From one generation to the next. The afternoon stretches onward. Heat presses against the land. Workers continue their tasks patiently. A farmer inspects crops. A potter shapes clay. A fisherman repairs equipment. A servant carries supplies across a courtyard. Children remain nearby. Watching. Helping. Learning. The gradual nature of training becomes especially visible during these ordinary afternoons. No dramatic moment announces a child's progress. No ceremony marks every new skill. Instead, improvement appears quietly. A task completed more efficiently. A responsibility handled independently. A mistake avoided through experience. Small changes accumulate over time. Then one day, adults notice. The child has grown. The child understands. The child is ready for more responsibility. The transformation feels natural because it happened gradually. Like the slow growth of crops beside the river. Like the changing colors of the sky at sunset. Like the endless movement of the Nile itself. Evening eventually arrives. The worst heat fades. Shadows lengthen. The sky softens into shades of gold and amber. Birds settle into trees. Workers begin returning home. Dusty roads fill with familiar figures walking back toward villages. Children accompany them. Tired perhaps. Yet comforted by routine. The smell of cooking rises into the cooling air. Bread bakes. Vegetables simmer. Families gather once more. The day's labor gives way to evening rest. Inside homes, conversations continue. A father discusses plans for tomorrow. A mother shares advice with her children. An elder recalls events from long ago. Young listeners sit quietly nearby. The lessons continue. Always continuing. Not because anyone has announced a formal lesson, but because life itself remains the teacher. Night slowly returns. Stars appear overhead. The village grows quiet once again. Oil lamps flicker softly against mud brick walls. Families settle onto woven mats. The sounds of conversation fade. One by one, people drift toward sleep. Children close their eyes after another day of observation and practice. Another day of becoming. Not yet adults. No longer infants. Traveling gradually through a long season of preparation. Outside, the Nile continues its patient journey through the darkness. The river moves beneath the stars just as it did yesterday. Just as it will tomorrow. And beside its ancient waters, countless childhoods continue to unfold in the gentle rhythm of ordinary life, where every day offers another lesson, another responsibility, and another quiet step toward the future. The Nile slips through the darkness like a ribbon of black glass. Above it, countless stars shine across the vast Egyptian sky. Their reflections tremble softly upon the water whenever a current shifts or a breeze touches the surface. Along the riverbanks, the world is still. Palm trees stand quietly against the night. Mud brick homes rest beneath the fading warmth of the previous day. The sounds of labor have disappeared. No tools strike stone. No merchants call out prices. No farmers guide animals through the fields. For a little while, all is calm. And in that calm, ancient Egypt feels almost timeless. The river flows. The stars watch. The night continues. Inside one small home near the Nile, a family sleeps close together. A child rests beside younger siblings. Nearby, parents lie on woven mats after another long day. The room is simple. The walls are made from mud brick. A few clay jars stand against one side. A basket of grain waits for morning. The air is warm but comfortable. The faint smell of baked bread still lingers from the evening meal. For this child, tomorrow will look much like today. And that predictability is important. Childhood in ancient Egypt was shaped by repetition. The same roads. The same fields. The same river. The same tasks. Again and again. What might seem repetitive to an outsider often felt reassuring to those who lived it. People knew what needed to be done. Children knew where they belonged. The routines created order. The routines created stability. The routines created learning. Slowly, without anyone noticing, the first signs of dawn appear. The eastern horizon begins to glow. Darkness retreats little by little. Birds awaken among the reeds. A cool breeze drifts across the water. Morning arrives. A mother rises first. Her feet touch the floor softly. She moves through the room carefully so as not to disturb everyone at once. Soon the fire is prepared. Soon grain is being ground. Soon the familiar sounds of morning begin. Children hear these sounds before they fully wake. Stone against stone. A clay lid being lifted. Water pouring into a bowl. The crackle of a small fire. These sounds become part of memory. Part of identity. Years later, they remain familiar. Many children likely measured time not through calendars, but through routine. They knew morning by its sounds. They knew midday by the heat. They knew evening by the smell of cooking fires. Life followed patterns that repeated so often they became woven into daily existence. As sunlight reaches the village, children begin their own activities. A very young child may remain close to home. An older child might already have responsibilities waiting. Some carry water. Some help prepare food. Some accompany adults into fields or workshops. The expectations grow gradually. Each year adds a little more responsibility. Each year adds a little more trust. No sudden transformation occurs. A child becomes capable through countless ordinary days. In many households, daughters learned skills connected to managing the home. They watched mothers, grandmothers, older sisters, and aunts. The lessons began early. Not because anyone wished to rush childhood, but because these skills required time to learn properly. Preparing food involved many steps. Grain had to be processed. Ingredients gathered. Cooking fires managed carefully. Storage containers maintained. Nothing happened instantly. Children learned through participation. At first they observed. Then they assisted. Eventually they performed tasks independently. The process unfolded naturally. A young girl carrying a small basket today might be managing much larger responsibilities years later. The journey from one stage to the next happened almost invisibly. Meanwhile, boys often spent increasing amounts of time beside fathers, uncles, and older brothers. Again, the exact lessons depended on family circumstances. A farming family taught farming. A fishing family taught fishing. A merchant family taught trade. An artisan family taught craft work. Knowledge flowed through generations. Parents rarely needed to ask what their children would learn. The answer surrounded them every day. The household itself contained the curriculum. The village itself contained the classroom. The morning grows brighter. Sunlight spreads across the Nile. Boats begin moving along the river. The water reflects gold and blue beneath the growing day. Children living near the river spend much of their lives observing its moods. Some mornings the water appears calm. Other mornings the current moves more quickly. The river teaches patience. The river teaches awareness. Those who spend enough time near water begin noticing small details. Changes in sound. Changes in color. Changes in movement. Children often develop these observations naturally. Long before adulthood, a boy helping near fishing boats learns to recognize signs that adults discuss. A girl carrying water from the river learns the safest paths along the bank. Knowledge accumulates quietly. The Nile becomes part of education. Not through words alone. Through experience. Farther from the river, fields stretch across the landscape. The land is fertile. Dark soil lies beneath growing crops. Workers move steadily through rows of plants. The work can be repetitive, but repetition often carries purpose. Children learn this lesson early. Many important tasks are repetitive. Grinding grain, weaving cloth, repairing nets, tending animals, planting seeds, harvesting crops. Again and again. The same actions. The same movements. The same careful attention. Through repetition comes skill. Through skill comes confidence. Through confidence comes responsibility. A child who has watched a task hundreds of times eventually begins performing it. Perhaps awkwardly at first. Mistakes happen. Corrections follow. Then improvement arrives. Not suddenly. Gradually. Like the slow growth of a date palm beside the river. Ancient Egyptian childhood allowed room for this gradual growth. People understood that mastery required time. Nobody expected perfection immediately. Learning was expected to unfold over years. In workshops throughout towns and villages, young apprentices continue their education. The workshop feels different from the fields. The air smells different. The sounds are different. Yet the process remains familiar. A carpenter shapes wood carefully. A stoneworker smooths rough surfaces. A potter turns clay into useful vessels. Children watch closely. The adults rarely waste movement. Years of practice have made their actions efficient, purposeful, calm. Young apprentices study these movements almost without realizing it. Their eyes follow experienced hands. Their minds store patterns. Eventually, they begin copying those patterns. At first, results may be imperfect. A rough edge remains. A measurement is slightly wrong. A surface lacks smoothness. But mistakes become teachers. Each error offers information. Each correction brings improvement. The pace remains slow. There is no need to hurry. The craft will still be there tomorrow. And the next day. And the next year. As the sun climbs higher, heat settles over the landscape. The warmth spreads across stone, earth, and water. Workers wipe sweat from their brows. Animals search for shade. Children feel the heat as well. Life beside the Nile required endurance. The climate itself shaped daily routines. People learned when to work hardest. When to slow down. When to rest. Children absorbed these rhythms naturally. No formal lesson was required. The environment taught them. The land taught them. The sun taught them. By midday, shade becomes valuable. Families pause when possible. Meals are shared. Conversations drip through the warm air. These pauses often reveal another side of childhood. Although training occupied much of life, children were not machines being prepared for work. They remained deeply connected to family. They laughed. They listened to stories. They formed friendships. They played games. They explored nearby spaces. The difference was that play existed within the larger structure of community life. It did not stand completely apart from responsibility. The two often blended together. A group of children might imitate adults while playing, pretending to be merchants, pretending to be farmers, pretending to steer boats. Through imagination, they practiced the world around them. Without realizing it, they rehearsed future roles. The afternoon unfolds slowly. Dust rises from roads. Merchants continue traveling. Workers continue laboring. Children continue learning. The village breathes in its familiar rhythm. Hours pass. The sunlight softens. The heat begins to fade. Evening approaches. This transition often brings relief. Long shadows stretch across the ground. The Nile reflects warm colors. Orange. Gold. Soft red. The river appears almost magical beneath the setting sun. Families begin returning home. Tools are stored. Animals are gathered. Boats are secured. The pace slows. Children walk beside adults after another day of learning. Perhaps they carried water. Perhaps they assisted with animals. Perhaps they spent hours watching skilled craftsmen. Whatever the task, another layer of knowledge has been added. Another day of preparation completed. Inside homes, cooking begins. The smell of bread drifts through the air. Vegetables cook slowly. Fish may roast over a fire. Families gather together. Conversation replaces labor. The atmosphere becomes softer. More reflective. This is often when elders speak. And when children listen. Stories emerge from memory. Stories of floods long ago. Stories of difficult harvests. Stories of journeys along the Nile. Stories of relatives now gone. The stories serve many purposes. Entertainment. Wisdom. Connection. Children learn where they come from. Who came before them. How previous generations faced challenges. These lessons matter just as much as practical skills. Perhaps even more. Because they teach belonging. A child who knows their community understands their place within it. Outside, darkness slowly returns. The stars appear one by one. The village quiets. Cooking fires fade. Voices soften. The river resumes its nightly whisper. Families prepare for sleep. Children settle onto woven mats. Their bodies are tired. Their minds are filled with another day of sights, sounds, and lessons. Tomorrow will bring new observations. New responsibilities. New experiences. The process never stops. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Simply one day at a time. One season at a time. 1 year at a time. And beneath the endless stars above ancient Egypt, childhood continues to flow gently alongside the Nile, carried forward by routine, family, labor, and patience, as countless young lives slowly move toward adulthood through the quiet wisdom of ordinary days. The Nile rests beneath the stars. Its waters move through the darkness with a calm certainty, flowing past villages, farms, temples, workshops, and docks where boats sleep quietly until morning. The river does not hurry. It never seems concerned about what lies ahead. It simply continues its journey, steady and patient. For the people of ancient Egypt, life often followed a similar rhythm. Days came and went. Seasons returned. Children grew. And learning happened slowly. Tonight, the villages along the river are quiet once more. A warm breeze drifts across the water. Palm fronds rustle softly. Somewhere in the darkness, a night bird calls briefly before silence returns. Inside homes made of mud brick, families rest after another day of work. Children sleep beside parents and siblings. Their bodies are tired from walking, carrying, helping, observing, and growing. Tomorrow will bring another ordinary day. And in ancient Egypt, ordinary days were often the most important teachers of all. As the final hours of night pass, the air remains pleasantly cool. This coolness never lasts very long. The people know that. The children know that too. Soon enough, the sun will rise above the eastern horizon and the familiar warmth will return. But for now, there is only stillness. A fisherman sleeping beside his family dreams quietly. His hands are rough from years of handling ropes and nets. Not far away, his son sleeps as well. The boy's hands are much smaller, much softer. Yet each year they become a little more familiar with the same tools. The same ropes. The same river. The same work. This gradual passing of knowledge formed the foundation of countless childhoods. No grand announcement marked the beginning. No special ceremony declared that training had started. Training simply existed. It was woven into life itself. When the first pale light appears, the village begins to awaken. The change happens slowly. A rooster calls somewhere in the distance. A door opens. Footsteps cross a courtyard. A cooking fire crackles softly. The familiar sounds of morning return one by one. Children hear these sounds every day. By the time they are old enough to help with household tasks, the rhythm already feels natural. They know what comes next. They know which jobs happen first. They know where water is kept. They know where grain is stored. Knowledge has been building quietly for years. Long before anyone thinks of it as education. One child rises and helps carry a small basket. Another assists with preparing the morning meal. A younger sibling watches from nearby. Watching is often the first stage of learning. Before a child can perform a task, the task must become familiar. Ancient Egyptian children spent years becoming familiar with the world around them. The process was slow, but it was effective. Every morning added another layer. Every season added another layer. Every year added another layer. The village itself became a book filled with lessons. The roads taught lessons. The fields taught lessons. The river taught lessons. The people taught lessons. Even silence taught lessons. As sunlight spreads across the landscape, workers begin moving toward their daily responsibilities. Farmers head toward the fields. Fishermen move toward the water. Craftsmen open workshops. Merchants prepare goods. Children often accompany them. Not every child. Not every day. But often enough that work becomes familiar long before adulthood arrives. A young boy walking beside his father through the fields notices details that adults sometimes overlook. Morning dew still resting on certain plants. Birds gathering in particular places. Fresh animal tracks crossing a pathway. The world is full of information. Children have a remarkable ability to notice it. Adults often help give meaning to these observations. A father might explain why birds are gathering near a certain area. A mother might explain why one crop appears healthier than another. A grandfather might describe changes he has noticed over many decades. These conversations become lessons. Gentle lessons. Natural lessons. The kind that settle deeply into memory. The fields near the Nile are already growing warmer. Workers move steadily through rows of crops. The rich soil beneath their feet exists because of the river. Year after year, floodwaters bring new layers of fertile earth. Children witness this cycle throughout their lives. They grow up understanding that survival depends upon forces larger than any individual person. The river matters. The weather matters. The seasons matter. This awareness often encourages humility. People learn that patience is necessary. Children learn it too. Seeds do not grow overnight. Crops cannot be rushed. Harvest arrives when it arrives. The land teaches patience every year. Elsewhere, in a riverside village, another child begins the day near a cluster of fishing boats. The smell of water mixes with the scent of wet reeds and old wood. Fishing nets hang nearby. Some need repair. Others are ready for use. The boy watches older fishermen examine their equipment. Every knot matters. Every rope matters. Every piece of equipment matters. Children quickly learn that small details can have large consequences. A weak knot may fail. A damaged net may tear further. Carelessness creates extra work later. These are practical lessons. Yet they often become life lessons as well. Attention. Responsibility. Consistency. The river teaches all three. As the morning continues, boats move across the water. Their reflections shimmer beneath the growing sunlight. Children standing on shore watch them disappear into the distance. Perhaps they imagine future journeys. Perhaps they simply enjoy the sight. Childhood still contains moments of wonder. Even in a world focused on preparation. Even in a society where responsibilities arrive early. Children remain curious. They remain imaginative. They remain capable of finding beauty in ordinary things. A bird gliding above the river. A fish breaking the surface of the water. A brightly painted boat passing by. A cloud casting shadows across the fields. Small moments often stay in memory longest. The sun climbs higher. The coolness of morning begins to fade. Heat spreads gradually across the land. Workers adjust their pace. Shade becomes increasingly valuable. Children learn how to manage their energy. They learn when to move quickly. When to rest. When to conserve effort. These lessons are practical. The Egyptian climate demands them. No one can ignore the heat for long. By midday, the village moves more slowly. Stone walls radiate warmth. Dust hangs in the air. The horizon shimmers. Families gather where shade can be found. Meals are shared. Water is carefully consumed. Conversations drift lazily through the afternoon warmth. These moments of rest reveal another important aspect of childhood. Learning does not always happen through activity. Sometimes learning happens through listening. Children often spend long periods listening to adults talk. Not formal speeches. Not organized lessons. Simple conversations. Discussions about crops. Discussions about trade. Discussions about relatives. Discussions about events from years ago. Children absorb all of it. The information settles quietly into memory. A young listener may not fully understand everything being discussed. That does not matter. Understanding often arrives later. The memory remains waiting. Years afterward, a lesson suddenly makes sense. An old conversation gains new meaning. Wisdom often works this way. Slowly. patiently, like the Nile itself. As the afternoon unfolds, workshops continue their steady rhythm. Inside a pottery workshop, a child watches an experienced craftsman shape clay. The wheel turns smoothly. Hands move confidently. The clay responds to years of practice. To an outsider, the process appears effortless. The child knows otherwise. The child has seen the years of work required to reach this level of skill. That understanding is important. Many ancient children grew up seeing mastery from close range. They witnessed the countless hours hidden behind expertise. They saw mistakes corrected. They saw techniques repeated. They saw patience rewarded. This shaped expectations. Becoming skilled required effort. Everyone understood that. A farmer learned over years. A fisherman learned over years. A scribe learned over years. A builder learned over years. Children accepted this gradual process because they lived inside it. The afternoon slowly gives way to evening. The fierce brightness softens. Golden light spreads across the Nile. The river seems almost to glow. Workers begin returning home. The roads fill with familiar faces. Dust rises beneath sandals. Voices carry softly through the cooling air. Children walk beside adults after another day of observation and practice. Some have learned new tasks. Some have strengthened existing skills. Some have simply watched and listened. All of it matters. Learning rarely follows a straight line. Some days bring visible progress. Other days quietly prepare the ground for future growth. Ancient childhood allowed room for both. As evening settles over the village, cooking fires appear one by one. Their smoke drifts upward into the darkening sky. The smell of bread spreads through the air. The smell is comforting. Familiar. Timeless. Families gather for the evening meal. The pace of life slows. Labor gives way to conversation. Children sit among parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and siblings. Stories emerge naturally. An elder recalls a flood from many years ago. Someone describes a journey to another village. Someone else remembers a harvest that exceeded expectations. Children listen closely. The stories connect them to something larger than themselves. A family. A community. A history. The lessons of childhood extend beyond practical skills. Children are also learning who they are, where they belong, what responsibilities they will eventually carry. The stars begin appearing overhead. One by one. The village grows quieter. Oil lamps flicker softly inside homes. The Nile reflects pale moonlight. Workers settle onto woven mats. Children grow sleepy. The sounds of conversation fade. Another day has passed. Another day of training. Another day of growing. Not through dramatic events. Not through sudden changes. But through countless small experiences gathered beside the river. And as sleep slowly returns to the ancient world, the Nile continues its endless journey through the darkness, carrying with it the quiet story of generations who learned that childhood was not separate from life, but the gentle beginning of it, unfolding one peaceful day at a time beneath the stars. The stars shine quietly above the Nile. Their light is faint, yet steady, scattered across the great dark sky that stretches from one horizon to the other. The river flows beneath them, moving through the sleeping land with the same patient rhythm it has followed for thousands of years. Nothing seems hurried. Nothing seems loud. The water glides past reeds and riverbanks. A gentle breeze brushes across the surface. Palm trees stand in silence. The villages sleep. Inside one small mud brick home, a family rests after a long day. A father lies sleeping beside the wall. A mother rests nearby. Children sleep close together on woven mats. The room is simple. The walls hold the warmth of the previous day. A clay jar sits in one corner. A basket rests beside it. Everything waits quietly for morning. Soon enough, another day will begin. And with it, another chapter in the long education of childhood. For many children in ancient Egypt, one of the most important lessons involved understanding time. Not time measured by clocks. Not time divided into exact minutes. But time measured through nature. Through sunlight. Through seasons. Through the behavior of animals. Through the rise and fall of the river. Children learned to notice these things because they lived among them every day. The natural world was not distant. It surrounded them constantly. A farmer's child might learn to recognize subtle changes in the fields. A fisherman's child might notice differences in the river. A merchant's child might become familiar with seasonal patterns of trade. Knowledge often began with awareness. And awareness began with observation. As the night slowly fades, the eastern horizon brightens. Dark blue turns to gray. Gray turns to pale gold. Birds begin calling from the reeds. The village stirs. Morning arrives. A woman steps into a courtyard carrying a clay vessel. A man prepares tools for the day ahead. Smoke rises from cooking fires. The familiar rhythm begins once more. Children wake and join it. For the youngest children, responsibilities remain small. Yet even small responsibilities carry meaning. A little child may be asked to fetch a lightweight object. To watch over a younger sibling for a few moments. To help gather simple materials. These tasks seem minor. But they teach something important. They teach trust. When adults assign responsibilities, they communicate confidence. The child begins to feel useful. Capable. Connected to the household. This feeling matters. Children who participate in family life often develop a strong sense of belonging. Their actions contribute to something larger than themselves. And every contribution, no matter how small, strengthens that connection. As the village fully awakens, sunlight spills across dusty roads. The air remains pleasant for now. Soon the heat will arrive. But morning still carries a freshness that workers appreciate. Farmers head toward the fields. Craftsmen open workshops. Boats begin moving along the river. Children accompany adults in many different directions. Some walk toward farmland. Others head toward workshops. Some remain near home. Every path offers opportunities to learn. A child walking beside a farmer notices how carefully adults observe the land. The soil. The plants. The weather. Nothing is ignored. Every detail may contain useful information. Ancient farming required attention. The success of a harvest often depended upon recognizing problems early. Children learned this through exposure. They watched experienced farmers examine crops. They listened to conversations about rainfall and flooding. They observed how decisions were made. The learning happened naturally. No formal lesson plan existed. The field itself became the teacher. Farther away, another child enters a workshop where a craftsman is already at work. The smell of wood fills the room. Sunlight filters through an open doorway. Tools rest neatly along one wall. The craftsman begins his day with movements practiced thousands of times before. A child watches closely. There is much to learn. Not only how to use tools, Not only how to shape materials, but how to work patiently, how to focus, how to remain calm when mistakes occur. Children often learn attitudes as much as skills. The behavior of adults leaves lasting impressions. A patient teacher teaches patience. A careful worker teaches care. A dependable parent teaches dependability. These lessons rarely require words. Actions speak clearly enough. As the morning continues, the marketplace becomes busy. Merchants arrange goods. Customers arrive. Animals move through crowded pathways. Voices fill the air. Children visiting these places encounter a world rich with activity. The marketplace offers lessons different from those found in fields or workshops. Here, communication becomes especially important. People negotiate, ask questions, exchange information, build relationships. Trust plays a major role. A merchant's reputation may take years to build. Children observing these interactions learn valuable social skills. They learn when to speak, when to listen, how to treat others respectfully, how agreements are reached, how communities remain connected. These are lessons that cannot easily be taught through instruction alone. They must be experienced. The marketplace provides those experiences every day. The sun rises higher. Warmth spreads across the land. Workers continue their tasks. Children continue learning. And gradually, another aspect of ancient childhood becomes visible. Children were often expected to develop endurance. Life along the Nile could be demanding. Distances had to be walked. Water had to be carried. Fields had to be tended. Boats had to be loaded. Work required physical effort. Children adapted to these realities over time. Not through harsh challenges, but through steady participation. A child who carries a small bundle today may carry a larger one next year. A child who walks a short distance this year may walk farther in the future. Strength develops gradually. Just like skill. Just like knowledge. Everything grows little by little. By midday, the heat becomes intense. The bright sun dominates the sky. Roads shimmer. Stone walls grow warm to the touch. The village slows its pace. People seek shade whenever possible. Children gather with family members beneath shelters or trees. Meals are shared. Water is passed carefully from hand to hand. Conversation fills the air. These quiet midday hours often reveal how deeply connected children were to the lives of adults. Many important discussions happen during shared meals. Plans for future work. Concerns about crops. News from neighboring villages. Family matters. Children hear all of it. Perhaps they do not understand every detail. That is not necessary. Simply hearing these conversations helps them understand how communities function, how decisions are made, how families solve problems. Listening itself becomes a form of education. And listening requires patience. Patience was one of the most valuable qualities a child could develop. Ancient Egyptian life rewarded patience constantly. Fields required patience. Crafts required patience. Fishing required patience. Learning required patience. The Nile itself seemed patient. Its waters moved steadily regardless of human concerns. Children growing up beside the river absorbed this lesson almost unconsciously. Good things often take time. The afternoon drifts onward. Heat hangs over the landscape. In a shaded workshop, a young apprentice watches an experienced potter shape clay. The wheel spins slowly. Hands guide the clay upward. The vessel takes shape. The process appears simple. Yet the apprentice knows how much practice lies behind each movement. The potter was once a child too. A child who watched, who learned, who practiced, who made mistakes. The apprentice understands that mastery is not immediate. This understanding encourages perseverance. If skill takes years to develop, then mistakes become less frightening. Mistakes simply become part of learning. Many children likely experienced this realization. Progress arrives slowly. And that is perfectly normal. Elsewhere, near the river, children help with fishing equipment. Nets are repaired. Ropes are examined. Boats are cleaned. The tasks may seem repetitive, but repetition builds familiarity. Familiarity builds confidence. Confidence builds competence. A child who handles fishing equipment every day eventually understands it deeply. Not because someone explained every detail. Because experience taught the lessons directly. The river remains a constant companion throughout this process. Its presence shapes nearly every aspect of life. Children grow up hearing its sounds, seeing its waters, depending upon its generosity. The Nile nourishes crops, supports trade, provides food, connects distant communities. Its importance is impossible to overlook. Many childhood memories likely involve the river. Morning light reflecting on the water. Boats passing quietly by. The smell of wet reeds. The sight of fishermen preparing nets. These images remain familiar throughout life. As evening approaches, the heat finally begins to fade. The air becomes gentler. Shadows lengthen across the ground. The sky takes on warm colors. Gold. Orange. Soft red. The Nile reflects them all. Workers begin returning home. Children walk beside parents and relatives. Another day has passed. Another day of learning. Another day of growing. Inside homes, evening routines begin. Cooking fires glow softly. The smell of bread drifts through the village. Families gather together. The atmosphere becomes calm, comfortable, familiar. An elder tells a story while younger listeners sit nearby. The story may describe life long ago. A memorable flood. A difficult harvest. A successful journey. The details matter. But so does the act of storytelling itself. Stories connect generations. They preserve knowledge. They strengthen identity. Children listening in the evening learn more than facts. They learn who they are. They learn where they belong. They learn what their community values. Outside, darkness gradually returns. Stars appear overhead. The village quiets. The sounds of labor disappear. One by one, families prepare for sleep. Children settle onto woven mats. Their eyes grow heavy. Tomorrow will bring another morning. Another opportunity to observe. To help. To listen. To learn. And beneath the endless stars above ancient Egypt, childhood continues its gentle journey, carried forward by routine, family, patience, and time, just as the Nile continues its quiet journey through the darkness, flowing steadily toward horizons unseen. The Nile flows beneath a sky filled with stars. Its dark waters wind through the sleeping land, passing villages that seem almost hidden beneath the night. From a distance, only a few faint lights can be seen. An oil lamp glowing softly through a doorway. A small fire burning low in a courtyard. The pale reflection of moonlight resting on a wall of mud brick. The world feels peaceful. The heat of the day has finally faded. A cooler breeze drifts over the river. Palm leaves sway gently. Reeds whisper along the banks. And everywhere, families rest. The farmer sleeps after tending fields beneath the sun. The fisherman sleeps after a day on the water. The potter sleeps after shaping clay with patient hands. And beside them sleep children. Children who are learning every day, even when they do not realize it. Children whose childhood is unfolding through countless ordinary moments. Children who are slowly becoming the next generation of workers, parents, neighbors, and elders. The night passes quietly. Hours drift by. The stars continue their slow journey overhead. Then, once again, the first signs of morning begin to appear. The eastern horizon grows pale. The darkness softens. Birds awaken among the reeds. A distant donkey brays somewhere beyond the village. The familiar cycle begins again. Ancient Egypt was a land built upon cycles. The river followed cycles. The seasons followed cycles. The crops followed cycles. And childhood followed cycles too. Children learned by repeating tasks. Repeating observations. Repeating routines. The same actions performed many times became habits. The habits became skills. The skills became confidence. The confidence became adulthood. As dawn spreads across the landscape, workers begin preparing for another day. Children watch these preparations closely. They always have. A father checks tools before leaving for the fields. A mother arranges supplies needed for the morning meal. An older sibling gathers water. A younger child follows nearby, observing everything. Observation remains one of the most powerful forms of learning. Many lessons begin long before a child is asked to perform a task. A child may watch bread being prepared hundreds of times before helping. A child may observe farming techniques for years before participating fully. A future craftsman may spend countless hours watching experienced workers before touching important tools. Knowledge often enters quietly. Without announcement. Without ceremony. Like sunlight slowly filling a room. As the village awakens completely, dusty roads begin to fill with movement. People greet one another. Animals wander through courtyards. Merchants prepare for travel. The sounds of daily life spread through the air. Children become part of this activity. Some accompany parents. Some remain close to home. Others help with simple household duties. Every family is different. Every village is different. Yet one pattern appears again and again. Children are included. They are not separate from community life. They are part of it. This inclusion shapes the way they understand the world. Responsibilities do not arrive suddenly at adulthood. Instead, responsibility grows gradually. A child learns what is expected because expectations increase little by little. Each year brings new opportunities to contribute. Each year brings greater trust. The process feels natural. The process feels steady. The process feels as predictable as the rising sun. Near the river, a young boy walks beside an older fisherman. The morning air smells of water and reeds. Boats rock gently against their moorings. The night is quiet. The river reflects the brightening sky. The fisherman pauses to examine a net. The boy watches carefully. A small tier must be repaired. The older man works patiently. His hands move with practiced confidence. The boy studies every movement. Perhaps no words are spoken. None are necessary. The lesson is visible. Years of experience are being passed forward through observation alone. Elsewhere, a young girl helps prepare food for the household. Grain is measured. Water is carried. Ingredients are organized. The work requires attention. Not because it is difficult, but because details matter. Children often learn this lesson early. Details matter. A forgotten task creates extra work later. Careful preparation prevents problems. Patience produces better results. These ideas appear repeatedly throughout ancient life. They become woven into everyday thinking. As the morning continues, the sun climbs steadily higher. Warmth spreads across the fields. Farmers move through rows of crops. The fertile soil beside the Nile supports countless lives. Children raised in farming households become deeply familiar with the land. They know the feel of soil beneath bare feet. They know the appearance of healthy crops. They know the smell of earth after flood waters retreat. The land becomes part of memory, part of identity. A child who spends years helping in the fields develops a relationship with the landscape itself. The fields are not merely places of work. They are places of learning. Places of family history. Places where childhood unfolds season after season. The annual flooding of the Nile plays a central role in this education. Children witness it repeatedly throughout their lives. The rising water. The spreading flood. The retreating river. The rich soil left behind. These events teach important lessons about patience and timing. No one can rush the flood. No one can delay it. People adapt. They prepare. They respond. Children learn to do the same. In this way, nature itself becomes a teacher. Its lessons are simple, yet profound. Observe. Prepare. Be patient. Work steadily. Accept what cannot be changed. As the day grows warmer, activity continues across towns and villages. Workshops hum with quiet productivity. Inside one workshop, a young apprentice watches a skilled stone carver. The room is warm. Dust hangs faintly in the sunlight. Stone fragments lie scattered across the floor. The craftsman works carefully. Each strike of a tool is deliberate. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is rushed. The apprentice watches with complete attention. One careless strike could damage hours of work. Precision matters. Control matters. The child learns not only technique but mindset. Patience. Concentration. Respect for the craft. These qualities are difficult to teach through words alone. They must be demonstrated. The workshop demonstrates them every day. Hours pass. The sun reaches its highest point. Heat settles heavily across the landscape. The air feels still. Workers seek shade when possible. Children do the same. Midday brings a temporary slowing of activity. Meals are shared. Water is consumed carefully. Conversations drift through the warm air. These midday conversations often provide another kind of education. Family members discuss practical matters. Crop conditions. Trade opportunities. Repairs that need attention. Upcoming work. Children listen. Sometimes they ask questions. Sometimes they remain silent. Either way, they are learning. They are learning how adults think. How adults plan. How adults solve problems. The lessons are subtle, yet powerful. Listening prepares them for future responsibilities. It teaches them how communities function, how cooperation works, how decisions affect others. Ancient childhood involved far more than learning practical skills. It involved learning how to participate in a larger social world. A world built on relationships, trust, cooperation, mutual support. The afternoon stretches onward. Heat continues to blanket the land. Dust rises along busy roads. Boats move steadily along the river. Life continues at its familiar pace. A young apprentice carries supplies across a workshop. A child helps guide livestock toward water. Another assists with gathering materials needed for evening tasks. These contributions may seem small, yet they matter. Small responsibilities often become foundations for larger ones. Adults notice reliability. Adults notice effort. Trust grows through experience. The gradual increase in responsibility reflects one of the most important features of ancient childhood. Growth is expected, but growth is expected to take time. Children are not rushed toward adulthood overnight. Instead, they move toward it step by step, season by season, year by year. The transformation is so gradual that it often goes unnoticed. One day a child is observing. Years later that same person is teaching others. The process feels natural because it unfolds slowly. Like the growth of crops. Like the movement of the river. Like the turning of seasons. Eventually evening arrives. The fierce brightness softens. Long shadows stretch across fields and roads. The air becomes more comfortable. Workers begin returning home. The village changes mood. The busy energy of the day gives way to something calmer. Something quieter. Children walk beside parents carrying baskets, tools, or supplies. Another day of learning has passed. Another day of preparation. Cooking fires begin to glow. The smell of bread drifts through the air. Voices rise softly from courtyards. Families gather together. Meals are shared. Stories are told. An elder remembers a flood from many years ago. A parent offers advice. A child listens carefully. These evening hours carry a special warmth. Not only because of the firelight, but because families are together. Work has ended. The pace has slowed. There is time to talk. Time to listen. Time to remember. The stars begin appearing overhead once more. The Nile reflects their light. The village grows quieter. Oil lamps flicker softly behind mud brick walls. Children settle onto woven mats. Their bodies feel pleasantly tired. Their minds carry memories from another ordinary day. A repaired fishing net. A conversation during a meal. A lesson observed in a workshop. A task completed successfully. Small moments. Yet together they shape a life. And as sleep gradually returns to ancient Egypt, the river continues its endless journey through the darkness, flowing past villages where childhood is not separate from the world of adults, but gently woven into it, one day at a time, beneath the quiet stars beside the Nile. The Nile moves through the night without a sound. Its waters slip past sleeping villages and silent fields, reflecting the stars that stretch across the vast Egyptian sky. The river has seen countless nights like this one. It has watched children fall asleep beside their families. It has watched them wake, grow, learn, and eventually take their place among the adults who once guided them. Tonight, the river continues its patient journey. The villages rest. The workshops are empty. The fields are still. The boats are tied securely along the banks. Only the breeze moves through the reeds. Only the water continues its endless motion. Inside a modest home near the river, a child sleeps deeply after a long day. The room is simple. Mud brick walls surround the family. A few baskets rest near the doorway. Clay jars stand against one wall. The faint smell of bread remains in the air. Everything feels familiar, comfortable, safe. This feeling of familiarity shapes much of childhood. Children grow surrounded by routines they know well. The same people, the same places, the same sounds, the same daily patterns. These routines create stability, and stability creates space for learning. When a child knows what to expect, attention can turn toward observation, toward practice, toward understanding. The stars slowly begin to fade. Morning approaches once again. The eastern horizon grows lighter. The darkness softens. The first birds awaken. A cool breeze drifts across the Nile. For a brief moment, the world feels fresh and quiet. Then the day begins. A woman steps outside carrying a clay vessel. A man gathers tools. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Children wake and stretch. The rhythm of life resumes. In ancient Egypt, childhood often involved learning not only skills but timing. Knowing when something should be done. Knowing the right moment to act. This kind of knowledge mattered greatly. A farmer needed to understand planting seasons. A fisherman needed to understand the river. A merchant needed to understand market activity. A baker needed to understand preparation times. Children learned these rhythms through constant exposure. Every day provided examples. Every season provided reminders. A young child watching adults soon begins noticing patterns. The same tasks happen at the same time. The same preparations occur before important work. The same routines return again and again. Life follows an order. Understanding that order becomes part of growing up. As sunlight spreads across the landscape, the village gradually fills with movement. Doors open. Voices carry through the air. Animals stir in courtyards. Workers begin their journeys. Children often move alongside them. A boy walks toward the fields with his father. A girl remains near home helping with household tasks. Another child follows an older sibling toward a workshop. Different paths. Different lessons. The same process of learning. Near the fields, the earth still feels cool from the night. Farmers inspect crops. The river glimmers in the distance. Birds move among the reeds. The landscape feels alive. Children growing up in farming communities become skilled observers. The success of agriculture often depends upon noticing changes. Small changes. A plant growing unusually. A patch of soil drying too quickly. Signs of insects. Changes in weather. Adults pay close attention. Children learn to do the same. Observation becomes habit. And habit becomes skill. This type of learning requires time. No one can teach it in a single day. The land itself becomes the instructor. The seasons provide the lessons. Years provide the understanding. Farther away, along a busy riverbank, another child watches boats arriving from distant communities. The boats carry grain, pottery, stone, cloth, goods from many places. The river serves as a highway connecting the land. Children living near these docks often grow up hearing stories from travelers. News from distant settlements. Descriptions of unfamiliar places. Accounts of unusual events. These stories widen a child's understanding of the world. Even if they never travel far themselves. The river carries more than cargo. It carries ideas, memories, Experiences. Children listen carefully. Listening remains one of the most important forms of education. Much knowledge enters through the ears before it ever reaches the hands. The morning grows warmer. The sun climbs steadily. Activity spreads throughout workshops. Inside a weaving workshop, threads stretch across wooden frames. The room is filled with quiet concentration. Hands move carefully. Patterns slowly emerge. A child sits nearby observing. At first, weaving may seem mysterious. The threads appear complicated. The patterns difficult to understand. But repeated observation changes everything. What once seemed confusing becomes familiar. The child begins recognizing techniques, understanding processes, predicting outcomes. This transformation happens often during childhood. Confusion slowly becomes understanding. Not through sudden realization, but through patient exposure. Again and again. Day after day. A similar process unfolds in homes throughout the land. A young girl helping prepare food gradually learns every step involved. Not all at once. One step at a time. First observation. Then assistance. Then responsibility. Eventually mastery. The same progression appears almost everywhere. Children are given time to learn. Time to practice. Time to make mistakes. Time to improve. The pace may feel slow. But slow learning often creates strong foundations. As the sun reaches higher into the sky, the heat begins to settle over the land. Workers adjust naturally. Tasks requiring greater effort may be completed earlier. Movement becomes more measured. Shade becomes more valuable. Children learn these rhythms alongside adults. The climate itself teaches lessons. The importance of preparation. The importance of conserving energy. The importance of patience. A child raised beside the Nile develops a deep awareness of the environment. The weather is not something distant. It shapes daily life directly. The same is true of the river. The same is true of the land. Nature becomes an active participant in education. Not a backdrop. A teacher. By midday, families gather for meals. The brightest sunlight floods courtyards and roads. Stone surfaces feel warm. The air grows heavy. Voices drift through shaded areas. Children sit among adults. Listening. Watching. Learning. These shared meals often strengthen family bonds. They provide opportunities for conversation. For advice. For storytelling. An elder might describe life many years earlier. A parent might explain a recent decision. A relative might share news from another village. Children absorb these discussions naturally. No special effort is required. Simply being present is enough. Many important lessons arrive this way. Quietly. Without announcement. The afternoon unfolds slowly. Heat lingers over the landscape. In a carpenter's workshop, a young apprentice carries pieces of wood from one area to another. The task is simple. Yet even simple tasks contribute to learning. The apprentice becomes familiar with materials, with tools, with the organization of the workspace. Every experience adds another layer of understanding. Sometimes children learn by doing. Sometimes by watching. Sometimes by listening. All three methods work together. A complete education emerges from their combination. The carpenter himself was once a child. He too carried materials. He too observed older craftsmen. He too learned through repetition. Now he passes knowledge forward. The cycle continues. Generation after generation. The same process can be seen in countless places. A farmer teaching a son. A mother teaching a daughter. An artisan guiding an apprentice. An elder sharing stories with younger listeners. Knowledge flows through society like the Nile flows through the land. Steady. Continuous. Essential. As afternoon slowly becomes evening, the light begins to change. The harsh brightness softens. Long shadows appear. The temperature gradually cools. Workers finish their tasks. Tools are stored. Animals are gathered. Boats are secured. Children help where they can. Some carry supplies. Some clean work areas. Some simply accompany adults home. The village settles into a gentler rhythm. Cooking fires are lit. The smell of bread spreads through the streets. Families gather together once more. The atmosphere feels warm and welcoming. This is often when children hear stories. Stories about relatives. Stories about the river. Stories about past harvests. Stories about life before they were born. These stories carry more than entertainment. They carry values, expectations, memories, identity. Through stories, children learn what their community considers important. Hard work, patience, generosity, responsibility, respect. The lessons become part of who they are. Not because they are forced. Because they are repeated gently over many years. Outside, darkness returns. The stars appear overhead. The Nile reflects their pale light. The village grows quiet. Families prepare for sleep. Children settle onto woven mats. The sounds of conversation fade. The sounds of the river remain. Tomorrow will bring another dawn. Another day of learning. Another day of preparation. Another day of becoming. And beneath the endless canopy of stars, beside the ancient Nile that never stops flowing, childhood continues its quiet work, shaping young lives through routine, observation, family, and time, just as it has done for countless generations, carried gently along by the steady rhythm of the river. As the night settles fully over the Nile, the river continues its quiet journey through the darkness. The villages have grown still. The workshops stand empty. The fields rest beneath the stars. The boats along the riverbank rock gently in the cool night air. Across ancient Egypt, countless homes lie silent now. The fires have faded into glowing embers. The last conversations have drifted away. Oil lamps burn low. Families sleep behind mud brick walls, gathered close together as they have been for generations. And among them are children. Some very young. Some nearly grown. All moving through the long and gentle path from childhood into adulthood. Not through sudden change. Not through a single important day. But through thousands of ordinary mornings. Thousands of shared meals. Thousands of lessons learned while standing beside parents, grandparents, neighbors, and friends. A basket carried. A fishing net repaired. A loaf of bread prepared. A story remembered. A field tended beneath the warm sun. A quiet evening spent listening beside the fire. Little by little, year by year, childhood became preparation. And preparation became life. The Nile witnessed it all. It watched children splash along its banks. It watched them carry water from its shores. It watched them become farmers, scribes, fishermen, merchants, builders, mothers, fathers, and elders. The river kept flowing. The generations kept changing. the lessons kept passing from one set of hands to another. Now the stars shine brightly above the ancient land. Their reflections shimmer softly upon the water. A breeze moves through the reeds. Palm leaves whisper in the darkness. Somewhere far away, a night bird calls once and then falls silent again. The world feels calm, steady, unhurried. The heat of the day is gone. The roads are empty. The fields are quiet. The river alone continues its endless journey beneath the moonlight. And perhaps, if we pause here for a moment, we can imagine ourselves beside those ancient waters. The cool night air. The gentle sound of moving water. The distant outline of mud brick homes resting beneath the stars. The comforting feeling that tomorrow will arrive just as it always has. Slowly. Softly. Without hurry. The people of ancient Egypt have drifted into sleep. The farmers rest. The fishermen rest. The craftsmen rest. The children rest. And the Nile carries their stories onward through the darkness. So let the river continue flowing. Let the stars remain overhead. Let the night grow deeper and quieter. And as the ancient world settles into silence beside the peaceful waters of the Nile, may everything become still. May the voices fade. May the roads empty. May the lamps dim. Until there is only the soft whisper of the river beneath the stars. Flowing gently, endlessly, into the quiet night.